Good morning, students. Today we are going to dive deep into the unknown, into the dark, with only a black aeroplane to guide us into the eye of the mysterious unknown. Yes, today we are going to discuss Frederick Forsyth's Black Aeroplane from CBSE 10th Standard Textbook, First Flight. But before anything else, let's take a brief glance at the author's biography. Frederick Forsyth was born on 25th August 1938 in Ashford, England. He lives still today at the age of 81. He served in the Royal Air Force and also as a journalist. He further worked with British intelligence agency M16. His notable works include The Day of the Jackal, The Odessa Files, The Dogs of War. All these novels have been translated for the big screen, silver screen. His autobiography is The Outsider: My Life in Intrigue. Forsyth was honored as the Commander of the Order of the British Empire in 1997, and his literary style involves realism. Now let us have a look at the themes of this text. For the themes, we have courage versus foolishness, and the text goes on to show that you can always find people who are helping. Let's have a look at the pictographic representation of this particular text. A black night, full moon, clear sky, and a silhouette of a black aeroplane. Where is it going? Let's find it. But before that, let's just stop for a while and think. Why should we bother ourselves with this story? What are we going to learn? Why at all should we read this? Let us start with a simple question. Do you believe in miracles? Do you believe that there is someone watching over you? Do you believe in your guardian angel? At least in Santa Claus and his annual gifts? In these recent times of crisis, as the impact of ongoing coronavirus pandemic continues to wreak havoc, a timeless quote from the late Fred Rogers tends to emerge again and again on the social media. Look for the helpers. You see, miracles do happen, and help often comes from unexpected corners in the form of perhaps a snowflake, if you remember dust of snow, or an unknown aeroplane. Bottom line is, such miracles make us realize that we are not alone, that there is someone looking out for us, and at the same time makes us question, are we really not alone? The question is, my dear friends, have given rise to countless science fictions and even the comic multiverse. Yes, Thanos, we are talking about you and about Darkseid, and yes, Lord Apocalypse, you are also included. You see, while these fine gentlemen are always bent on destroying the world as we know it, there are also the likes of, say, Thor and Superman who continues to protect us, avenge the wrongdoings, and bring justice. So let me ask you again, do you believe in your guardian angel? Do you think someone is watching over you? Think about it. And till then, let's talk about the characters. First of all, we have the narrator, and then the control tower operator, and finally, the mysterious pilot and his black aeroplane. Let us talk about conflict, the main central attraction of any story. In literature, conflict signifies a struggle between two opposing forces. Conflict is that element which makes a story really, really interesting. Think of the conflict between the final surviving players on their unknown battleground. It is that tension, that anticipation which makes PUBG such an addictive game. Just think about it. Just imagine if the conflict were not there. The final hide and seek, the final killing, mystery is not there. Would the game be really that interesting even then? Anyway, coming back to the story, the conflict in this story is external. It is between man and nature, but with a twist. True to the saying that man proposes and God disposes, nature comes down with all her wrath on the small plane as the narrator decides to reach home on that particular day. The rest of the story follows how the narrator survives that infernal storm and comes out of the conflict shaken but unharmed. Let's move on to the summary. See, man proposes, but God disposes. So, what does the man propose? Let's learn. The narrator was on his journey back home from France to England. He was a pilot, navigating his own aeroplane in the clear night sky. He was in an old Dakota aeroplane. He was dreaming of his vacation with his family. He checked with the Paris control tower before setting his final course. He switched over to his last fuel tank and estimated that he would be back home for breakfast. Everything was going well for him, but everything went wrong for him. God disposes. The narrator had left Paris 150 kilometers behind when he first saw the storm clouds. The narrator saw the storm clouds to pile one upon another like a mountain. He didn't have an engine powerful enough to fly up and above them. He didn't have enough fuel left to go around them. The only other option was to go back and postpone the trip, and the only way out was to the dark clouds. The narrator wanted to be with his family. He dived straight into the clouds, and everything went dark. His flight compass, his radio, all suddenly went dead, that is, stopped functioning. He had no hope left. Before we move further on, the narrator, the pilot, he had no hopes left. So, what happened to him? Before we find out the answers to such questions, let's stop for a moment and see some technical terms which we came across. First of all, what is this Dakota aeroplane? The Douglas Dakota is without doubt one of the most famous and most successful designs of aircraft in history. It was originally known as the Douglas Sleeper Transport and has been known as DC-3, the civilian versions, C-47 Skytrain, AC-47 gunship, C-53 R-4D, C-117 and Dakota in United Kingdom and Commonwealth service. Let's take a look at this phrase, look forward. To feel happy and excited about something that is going to happen. He has worked hard and was looking forward to his retirement. Another modal verb ought to be used to show when it is necessary or would be a good thing to perform the activity referred to by the following verb and infinitive. For example, you ought to be kind to him. Next we have I wanted that breakfast. Really? Was he that hungry? No. Actually, breakfast here symbolically represents the narrator's home and family in England. It goes on to show how much he wanted to be with them, that he was ready to take such a risk. And let's look at this simple word, impossible. Very difficult to deal with. He had not taken proper precaution, and now it seemed impossible to escape his fate. The compass was dead. Well, technically speaking, the compass didn't have life to begin with, but dead here actually means lacking the power to respond. For example, my legs were dead after the 10 miles hike. Not that it was dead with the rest of me. I was alive. My legs lacked the power to respond. Before we move on to the next part of the summary, let's stop for a moment and revise what we learn, what we have learned, what we know right now. The story we know follows a singular track. The narrator works in France, and obviously in his vacation he plans to go back to his home in England. He has his own plane, so there is no point in waiting. He seems to be a quite capable pilot, the way he decides to fly at night. Dear students, do remember this point, that the pilot seemed to be quite capable. However, things changed when he suddenly faced huge storm clouds rising before him like mountains. His good sense, rational, logical sense told him that he should go back to Paris and wait for a clearer sky. But in his longing to be with his family and because of his confidence on his abilities, he decided to take the risk and fly through it. Because neither he could take the plane above the clouds, nor he had enough fuel left to go around. However, things went wrong the moment he entered the clouds. Everything went dark inside, and his compass and radio stopped functioning. He was basically flying blind. Idiomatically speaking, he did look before he leapt, but forgot that it's better to be late than to never reach the destination. Now, in that high altitude, amidst the dark clouds, he was facing certain death for his foolish rashness. So, what happens next? Look for the helpers. Indeed, the narrator had almost given up all hope. Suddenly, he saw a black aeroplane next to his plane. The strange plane was flying dark, there was no light on its wings. However, he noticed that the pilot of this new aircraft was signaling him to follow. Realizing that help was there, the narrator started to follow the black plane. Just as he was thinking his tank would go empty, the stranger led him out of the storm clouds. There was an airport, and in front of him was the runway. As he turned to thank his savior, he noticed with surprise that the plane was gone. Upon inquiry, he further learned that his was the only plane up there that night. So, what happened? Whose plane was that? Who saved him? It was a miracle. The narrator came safely back from a certain painful death. For one moment, everything had gone bleak for him, but it turned out to be his lucky night, and someone led him safely out of the storm clouds. The million-dollar question is, who was flying that second plane? Forsyth ends this story on a cliffhanger. Cliffhanger actually means a story or event with a strong element of suspense. It's the reader's task to come up with theories to unravel the second pilot's identity. And here we will discuss four theories. What are they? First of all, hallucination, ghost. And if ghost is there, there must be a guardian angel. God must be there. And finally, we will discuss multi-dimension and wormhole. Now let's come up with them. First of all, hallucination. From the way the pilot flies at night, we can assume that he was quite competent. In the storm cloud, he may have experienced an out of body hallucination, projecting his own self in the form of a black aeroplane. There was really nobody up there that night, and it was his sheer luck that he could navigate his way out of the storm clouds. A classic Fight Club or Karthik calling Karthik situation. If you don't know what I'm talking about here, head over to Netflix or YouTube and watch these movies. However, unlike these movies, here the hallucination achieves something positive and saves the life of the narrator. Now let's talk about the ghost. It is said that when somebody dies in an accident, his spirit gets trapped there. We call it a ghost. It may have happened that some plane had crashed there long before and the spirit of the dead pilot was trapped in there. But instead of causing terror as ghosts are renowned for, he may have been helping, like Bhoot Uncle, helping such other ill fated pilots to reach safety. Next, let's talk about Guardian Angel. Just like the ghost story, only from the side of the Light Brigade. Not Tennyson's charge of the Light Brigade, but God's. God has something planned for us all, and we are all His instrument. That is why He has sent us our guardian angels to keep an eye on us and keep us from harm's way. In that desperate time, maybe the guardian angel of the narrator intervened and saved his life to further strengthen his belief in God and His miracles. After all, it was nothing short of a miracle the way he survived the storm. Yes, finally we come to, personally speaking, my favorite part. Uh, Another dimension and wormhole. What if, just think for a moment, what if the magnetic field in the storm somehow had generated a portal? A Bermuda Triangle like situation. Remember this, we will come back to the Bermuda Triangle afterwards. A Bermuda Triangle like situation where the narrator saw a plane from another timeline who, for that time being, guided him to safety and then returned back to his own time zone. Or maybe the dimension from where he accidentally came in. You may think that this is crazy, but such things really happened. You see this Venn diagram. There is the narrator's timeline and there is the Black Aeroplane's timeline. And perhaps during the storm, the two timelines had collapsed one upon another. And for some time being, both were in that common zone. It may be possible. Who knows? Anyway, some thoughts on the title. The narrator was facing a certain death because of his rash decision. His compass and radio all were malfunctioning, and there was no way he could come out of it alive. However, the sudden appearance of the black aeroplane gave him hope, and following it, he reached safety. The black aeroplane thus was crucial to his survival. Yet, when he turned to thank the pilot, he couldn't find the plane. Not only that, when he inquired upon reaching about the plane in the control center, he was told that his was the only plane up there that night. Not only the black aeroplane saved his life, but after that it returned to the shroud of mystery from where he came in the first place. Because of the way it saves the life of the narrator and the mystery that surrounds its appearance and disappearance. As title, Black Aeroplane is perfect. Now, before we leave, let's have that Bermuda Triangle like connection. This is from history.com, as you can see, and you can check it for yourself. You will find some more stories even. You see, this happened on 5th December 1945 at 10 minutes past 2. Five US Avenger torpedo bombers comprising Flight 19 took off from Fort Lauderdale Naval Air Station in Florida on a routine 3-hour training mission. Flight 19 was scheduled to take them due east for 120 miles, north for 73 miles, and then back over a final 120-mile leg that would return them to the naval base. They never returned. 2 hours after the flight began, the leader of the squadron, who had been flying in the area for more than 6 months, reported that his compass and backup compass had failed and that his position was unknown. I think you can relate this with the narrator's story. His compass, his radio all malfunctioned. Let's move on. The other planes experienced similar instrument malfunctions. Radio facilities on land were contacted to find the location of the lost squadron, but none were successful. After 2 more hours of confused messages from the flyers, a distorted radio transmission from the squadron leader was heard at 6:20 p.m., apparently calling for his men to prepare to ditch their aircraft simultaneously because of lack of fuel. By this time, several land radar stations finally determined that Flight 19 was somewhere north of the Bahamas and east of the Florida coast, and at 27 minutes past 7 p.m., a search and rescue Mariner aircraft took off with a 13-man crew. 3 minutes later, the Mariner aircraft radioed to its home base that its mission was underway. The Mariner was never heard from again. Later, there was a report from a tanker cruising off the coast of Florida of a visible explosion seen at 50 minutes past 7 in the evening. The disappearance of the 14 men of Flight 19 and the 13 men of the Mariner led to one of the largest air and seas searches to that date, and hundreds of ships and aircraft combed thousands of square miles of the Atlantic Ocean, the Gulf of Mexico, and remote locations within the interior of Florida. No trace of the bodies or aircraft was ever found. Who knows where they went? And who can tell for sure that one of them didn't come back that stormy night to save our narrator? Just think about it. Well, that's all for now. Thank you for listening.